my time at Wazoo, man, and the time after, it was really I really had to unpack over the years and figure out why those things were happening to me. Because in my heart, I felt like I was a good dude, but my actions uh, didn't line up with it, and I think it was just because of all the trauma that I experienced.
Welcome again to Chino Y Chicano. I'm Enrique Cerna. Well, coming up, a conversation with writer, director, and producer Phillip Bobo. As you will hear, the story of his journey to Hollywood is quite compelling. Along the way, he received some important mentoring from a prominent Oscar-winning actor. Now, Phillip Bobo's journey began at Washington State University, where he was a talented wide receiver in the early 90s. All these years later, he is still remembered for an amazing catch he made during a snowstorm in the 1992 Apple Cup.
Touchdown, Washington State. Phillip Bobo with the catch.
After that game, Phillip made a life-changing decision that would bring him challenge and adversity, but it would also help him find his path and purpose in life. Here now is my conversation with Phillip Bobo. Phillip Bobo, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. No problem.
I got a chance to meet you really for the first time, although I knew of you for a long time from your football days, at WSU recently at a game, Utah State game in early November. And you were honored there by WSU Global as one of their distinguished alumni. How did that feel, being able to, with everything that you have gone through, and we'll talk about that, to have that happen?
You know what? It was first of all, I was humbled and honored to even be thought of for something other than football at Washington State. I was up there for the Legends Golf Tournament, and about a week or two later, I got that text saying that they wanted to honor me by inducting me into the distinguished alumni. And my first question was why, it's like, okay. And then they explained to me that I guess they researched what I've done after football with the youth, and as well as getting my film career jump started, and that I actually finished my degree years later through the global community that they have up there via online. So it was fun. I think the biggest part of it all is my second born being able to go up there with me and experience what Wazoo is like, because he's 14, so he didn't, he has no idea about the work that I put in for the 3 years I was there, or the 3 years that I played. So it was good to see his reaction to people, and I guess their reaction to me. Got my daddy points on. So that was probably the best part of it, though, is seeing him get to witness all that. He's like, Dad, I want to go to college now. I said, I know you do, man.
That's good. The daddy point thing, I can totally understand that, having worked in television for a long time. It kind of, after a while, your kids, they really don't, they don't connect. They sort of take for granted what you're doing, and you're the old guy, so they don't really listen to you until somebody else comes up and say, hey, your daddy did this. And then it connects with them and all of that. But you have an older son there that graduated.
Yeah, right, he graduated in 2018 from Wazoo. Yeah. He made me a grandpa in June.
So let's talk about the Phillip Bobo story, because you have a hell of a story, really. And it's really far more than football, I think, which is why I really wanted to talk to you. First of all, where'd you grow up?
Pasadena, California. Yeah. And then I moved to Moreno Valley my sophomore year.
So how did you get recruited to go to WSU?
Coach Carmelowitz was an offensive line coach for Wazoo back in the Dennis Erickson tenure, and Erickson came uh, to visit, and then I went up to Wazoo and I committed in his in his office right then and there. I didn't even have to do that at the time. I still had San Diego State and New Mexico to visit. I had already visited Utah. But when I went up to Wazoo, in back in those days, Pac-10 was a big deal. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me, being that that's the only Pac-10 school who offered me a full ride. So I committed with him in his office, and I guess a week or two later, I found out he was going to Miami. Um, I inquired to make the jump with him, uh, but Mike Price sent Gerald Carr, the receivers coach, down to visit me and kind of re-recruit me, and talking with my mom and I guess my girlfriend at the time. Miami was a long plane ride for them, or I don't know, but I'm happy that I stuck with Wazoo. I'm happy that I thugged it out, so to speak. Because when I first got there, it was tough for me, being that especially when the snow hit.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, man, I wonder what Miami's doing right now. What Miami's looking like. But I did inquire about it, but they squashed it for me, and I'm glad that they
Now,
did.
you had something happen that actually really had a tremendous impact on your life, um, and well before you made other decisions, and that you were in a car accident. Tell me about that and how that impacted you.
My best friend at the time, his name is Duncan Boyd. I would come down from Washington State, and he was going to school in Utah at the time. I would pick him up and take us to Cali, and then I would drop him off back in Utah, and uh, on my way to back to Washington. And this one summer, he got a new job, and they afforded him a, a station wagon. I was in Vegas at the time because my mom lived there, and he was in Dixie. I think he was going to Snow College. Snow College. So, he hit me up. It was like, I'm gonna come get you and bring you back, and we're gonna hang out, kind of a deal. Okay, so we hung out. We hung out all night. Um, and he had a thing about driving because with my friends, even in high school, I was always the driver. Um, and in this situation, he was adamant about not allowing that because his company car and an insurance thing. We got up super early. We barely slept, and I was trying my best to stay up with him. But then, I woke up and we were kind of skidding on the road, and then we hit. Back in those days, it was a 15 freeway. It's built up now, but before it was all desert. So we hit in the desert, and we just start boom, 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 tumbling. And I remember it so vividly. I had my hands on the dashboard as we were tumbling, and I just hear just chaos, stuff going on. And back in those days, that was in '91. The seatbelt law wasn't like enforced. It didn't become law yet. So we stopped, crashed, ended up on my side of the car. I kind of froze, and then I jumped out of his window, and I turned around, and I just saw him lying there. Um, and then this little streak of blood came out of his nose, and this incredible calm came over my body that I've never experienced before. And then I just realized he was gone, and I sat in the desert for about 20 minutes, and I think this trucker saw what happened and I guess pulled over. But I was 19 and I was sitting with my dead best friend for about 15, 20 minutes. And so they came and transported us. And this the first time I heard a grown man cry is when I called his father. And yeah, it was awful. But then I went back to school, and I think to your question, you said it impacted my life. It really did because I didn't realize until later on in life, in my 30s, that I was suffering from survivor's guilt. Um, because Duncan was the best of us. He was a really good dude, and he had just signed his scholarship um, to go to Oklahoma State. Just signed it. So in the fall, he was attending Oklahoma State, and he was my he was the only one out of my friends in high school that went to a D1 that got a scholarship to the D1 because I'm the only one out of high school. He went the JUCO route, but he ended up getting that, and that was a tremendous bond for me because I didn't have anybody else in my life that I could share my experiences with, and they actually understand the process of being a scholarship athlete. So our bond was really strong, and I remember when Facebook happened, somebody sent me an article that I did right when I got back to school, and in that article, I was explaining that uh, I didn't know why I was playing football anymore. So in that instance, now that I had time to really look at it, it was a part of me that died with him, um, and it was the football part uh, for reasons that I said, but throughout that time, no one ever talked to me. Like I didn't have being a mentor of kids and teenagers and having a teenager of my own. If kids go through stuff like that, you have to get that kid some help like immediately, and a lot of it. Because at that time, I didn't know what to I didn't know what to make of any of it. I was too busy worrying about why am I alive, and I only came out with this scratch on my arm. That's the only thing that happened to me. And it was like, why, he gets thrown out and die, but then I was on myself with that, but I didn't know it at the time, you know. Well, over the years, I've started recognizing it, and through doing some therapy, not specifically about that, but just understanding life and more importantly, knowing that death is certain for all of us. It really was a humbling experience. Now that I look back at it, and I'm able to go on with life and do the things that I've done. But there's for a long time there was a part of me that felt like I was undeserving of what the things that I was doing. I didn't, you know, I think a part of that had seeped into kind of the reason I left school as well. I just didn't feel like I deserved uh, the things that were coming to me because my career after that, I became that guy, Phillip Bobo, the football player. And it just didn't. It just never sat well with me, and I just wish I was able to exercise some of the emotion. Uh, at 19
So
years old.
that's pretty hard to do because
Yeah.
for particularly for guys, I think, uh, we have a maturity thing yet that we're dealing with. And
Mhm.
then just having something like that happen. And I could imagine you were just in shock too.
Our nature has never changed. We've always needed certain uh, certain things as human beings, and I think something like that is one of them. It existed. It just uh, didn't show itself to me, and I didn't know how to process it at all. I just literally didn't talk about it to anybody, like for years, a lot of years. And you know, that's not that's not the way that we should handle our youth as adults. We got a better responsibility. And I'll be the first to say these kids nowadays, they hard headed. They're different, man. They're different. But there's certain ways that you can implement what you've experienced, and they have an ear for it. I always look at my sons, and thankfully my oldest, he's doing really well, and he'll come back to me and like, Dad, the things that you were saying way back in the day, I'm starting to see it now. I was like, yeah, we're going through that process with my younger son, but those are the things that matter. I think a part of my issue as well is I had a trust issue. I didn't know who to trust in my life at that time. No grown man. My dad was incarcerated at the time, but no grown man was able to snatch me up and like, look, this is what it is, and do this and handle it this way. So I wasn't privy to any of that mentorship. Now there were people who tried, but I was a little more hard headed and didn't receive it in the way that I wish I would have. Because one thing that I did learn from leaving is that there's people that loved me up at Wazoo, and just during that time, I didn't, it just wasn't a thing for me.
So you had some other bumps along the way while you were at WSU, but yet, in the football field, you were good. You were a good receiver. And then comes along that Snow Bowl of 1992. But you made a decision,
Mm,
and you made a decision then to leave WSU
mm.
to go take a shot at the NFL. Drew Bledsoe, he was everybody knew he was going to be a number one pick. And I think, but everybody was shocked when you decided to do that. Talk about how that came about and uh, the impact that it ended up having really on your life.
If there's a regret in my life, it's that, and that would be the only one. Kind of piggybacking on what we were just talking about, mind you, I had uh, that energy going on with me during that time. My junior year came around, and I was being poached by a couple people. One of them was a close friend of the family, and mind you as well, uh, my father was incarcerated, so he had no bearing on what was going on in my life at that time, and therefore nobody did. And this man came around, and he was familiar, uh, since we he was around doing business with my father while I was in high school, so he was familiar. So I finally, after all this time, I find someone that I trust. Um, so again, my father was incarcerated. My my mom always needed the help, and what people didn't know is I had a son. Um, my freshman year, she was pregnant uh, the summer before I came to Wazoo,
Mm.
and again, she came to visit once, but he was born March 90. And she called, and another girl answered the phone, and then she disappeared on me. Like back in those days, there's no internet, no cell phone, so you could disappear. Come to find out, uh, during my junior year, I get a phone call, and it was her, and she had left. She was mad at me for the girl, but she had left and gotten married to somebody else, and um, but she, I guess, saw what I was doing in football, and got a divorce. So my thing was, I get to see my son after three years of not seeing him. So all of this stuff was piling up. And mind you, I still have the to survivor's guilt. I still didn't feel I was deserving of all of the accolades that was coming. I mean, imagine if I would have stayed my senior year. I would have been a big deal my senior year. Um, but all of this stuff was piling on me with the energy that I was carrying from being surviving the accident. My mom in desperate need of help. My father was locked up, but he was getting out. Then all of a sudden, I get to see my son. So I figured best thing to do to help everybody was to come out. I was thinking of it like that. I was like, I could help everybody. And he was gassing me up, saying that I was going to go in the first round and all of this stuff. That you know, he had his own motives for trying to get me out, which I soon discovered in camp. But it was just all of that stuff piled up, and I'll never forget Coach Williams. I went back up there, and he said, "The lesson that you need to take from this is that you quit. You just need to make sure you never quit anything else again." And out of everything that people said, I remember that because it was so poignant, because ultimately that's what happened. And I said, "Man, I had this going on." He was like, "So what? So what? You quit. You could have done made it through one more year of all of that." And that's kind of one of that whole era, even the draft day, that whole era made me realize how important attitude was, because that was a thing of mine. My attitude wasn't good at all because I just didn't trust anybody. I had all this burden on me. I had so much going on. So I acted it out. I acted out in a way that was a defensive way, um, as opposed to just being authentic in myself. Um, but later on the draft, when I left, I said some things in the paper, and it was in bad taste. Although it was true for me, it wasn't the entire truth. It was one of those hasty kind of "I'm gonna show you" kind of truths that a kid with the state of mind that I was in, that's how they would act out. Uh, so the day I declared the final day that you were supposed to, and this is interesting too. I the night before I said a prayer asking God to tell me, what I should do, and I woke up and I had my answer. My stomach was burning with the answer, and the answer was, "Don't leave school." And the man walked past my room, and I just couldn't tell him because I felt like, I mean, when I went down there, he was, you know, we was having fun, man. I'm in LA, the Super Bowl was there. We was hanging out with Death Row, Suge Knight and Snoop and all of them, and it was a great time. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna go back to Pullman after all of this. So he really gassed me to the point to where the day I declared, I I felt like empty. I felt really empty because I felt like I was leaving everybody, the people that were my people for the previous 3 years. I'm just leaving them, and I felt horrible about it. But I did it, and draft day come, and I didn't get drafted the first day. The second day, Cleveland Browns hit me up 7 in the morning, and I had my family there, and the embarrassment was obvious, and they said we're going to draft you in the fifth round. And I said, why didn't you draft me yesterday? My family was here and all that. He was like, well, it just happens like that. And they came and they didn't draft me because of my attitude. Instead of being appreciative and grateful of it, I was upset about not being drafted the day before just because of the way it looked. And like I said, the attitude part is so important in life.
So this guy, his name was Ron Brown. He actually had been a receiver in the NFL, right? At what point did you realize that he had used you? Really, to get money from your father, right?
I was on my training table. One of the players, I was with the Rams at the time. One of the players, Hall of Fame lineman, came up and told me what happened. And then it got back to him, and he called me. He was like, "That's not what the truth was." And then later on, when my dad got out, we talked about it, and it definitely was the truth. Um, so he had his own reasons, but I can't put it all on him because I'm the one that made the decision. I could have did it the whole thing. I just wasn't in the mind frame. I'm not mad at his hustle, but like I said, if you're knowing uh, that a kid is not mentally ready for the life that you're trying to bring him into, you owe it to that kid to back off. And as much time as I spent with him, there's undoubtedly he knew. So you had to know.
Yeah.
I remember drinking 40s before the combine, and he just was like, I seen that before, man, don't do it. But that was, it didn't really hit me. It was like, it's not gonna happen to me. I was so cocky at the time. That's not gonna happen to me. Went to the combine without training and ended up running a 4.5 or something stupid. And all of it is a culmination of just an underdeveloped mind at the time, and just going into a world that I had no clue existed.
At what point in your life do you think you really turned the corner after you kind of had gone all this?
Man, I'm still turning. But to answer your question, man, I felt like when I got to LA or Hollywood, so to speak, I really okay. So my last year playing football was in Edmonton, and I had my second knee surgery. Um, and I was done. I was like, look, I'm not, because it was so hard to get back from my first one. I was really good at Edmonton too. I was running a 4.3 for the first time ever, and I trained. I remember training, and what got me back into it because I was working a 9 to 5, and I'm like, I don't see how people do this. So my agent at the time called me. He was like, Canada. I'm like, I'm gone soon as this. So we did a nice a serious 10-week regimen, and I was ready when I got there. I was ready to play, and um, I cracked the starting lineup after like the fourth game, and sure enough, my own teammate fell on my knee, and I had the exact same surgery I had my rookie year, ACL, MCL, and PCL. So
Ooh, ooh.
the exact same surgeries. So I was like, look, I'm done with football. My first love, and if it was up to me, I would have went to a Juilliard or straight to film school out of high school.
Hmm.
I was always the artist type. I was in talent shows. I was MC. I was a DJ. So I was like, okay, let me go get this. And I was living in Corona at the time. If you're not aware, Corona is probably about an hour east of LA and some change east of LA. Um, I was trying to find a job out there. Mind you, at this time, I didn't have my degree. I didn't have it. Um, so it was difficult. And I just felt like if I could find a job in LA, uh, I could work my way up. I could find a way to the movie biz. So instead of being bogged down with the 9 to 5, I took a job. I was a door to door salesman. It's a company called DS Max. They would load us up anywhere from stuffed animals to knives and briefcases, and I would go in, introduce myself, and pretty soon these communities like Fallbrook, like Tustin, I was like a big deal. I was like a friend of theirs because I would come around right on time for somebody's birthday or what have you. And that was the first lesson that I got about myself. And I guess this is the beginning of the transformation that you asked about, because it was the first time in my life that I was appreciated without catching the football, and it was a humbling experience because I'm actually soliciting people to buy my $2 for $5 pillow. So I think that was the beginning of the transformation. A woman asked me if I wanted to be a model. I was like, I'm not the model type. And she asked me if I wanted to be a model scout. And I asked her what his job. She said Hollywood. I literally dropped everything. I slept in my car uh, when I got there. Then luckily the owner owned a apartment building in Long Beach. So out of the leads that I scouted, I would pay him. But it was probably, and I didn't tell anybody about football for a lot of years because I wanted to I wanted to do this artist thing from ground zero. I wanted to learn how to be an artist because I was a football player for so long. They just didn't mix, and I didn't want to be a flash in the pan kind of, just based on the fact that I had this history of football. And then YouTube came around and Facebook, and then the cat was let out of the bag that I used to play football.
Mhm.
So, but I went to film school. I went to I was an intern for some company, some entertainment companies. I was casting assistant. I just really wanted to learn what I wanted to do in the business. Um, then I
So
took up boxing, and it was so on and so forth. And boxing was a lot. It helped me a lot as well to kind of get to the other side to where I'm actually comfortable with this new person that I've become.
and were you interested in kind of soaking up everything about the business and trying to learn?
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly what I did for a lot of years. And then shoot, we're talking about a good 10 years. Uh and I didn't get paid for any of it uh until 2014 is when the first time I got paid as a writer.
Whoa.
And then I was like, okay, so I'm a writer now. So that's how that kind of evolved. But you know, the work is still ongoing. I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm confident in myself. I can look in the mirror and see love, and those things. It took time. I can't tell you when exactly it happened, but you know, I think as human beings, the work never stops. You know, if you stop, then you're not going to be here anymore
Yeah.
because we gotta we gotta figure this thing out. This is not like it's not an easy place to be, right? As a human being, it's not
Right.
easy. You always have to figure something out. So, but I'm I love me. So
That's the one thing I think maybe in going through so much adversity that you finally reach that point where
yeah,
you can give yourself a break and understand,
yeah,
hey, I'm okay. And if you
yeah.
think about it too, we're all lifelong learners.
Right.
So I think that that's a good thing too. Did I read somewhere that you actually worked on a project that Denzel Washington was directing?
I met him in a gym. Um, this is a good story for you. So I my rookie year, I played on a basketball team. We had this celebrity basketball. He was the coach of my team, and Arsenio Hall was the coach of another team. So
Wow.
that was back in '93. So I had kind of like a segue. He walks in the gym, and I have a segue. And believe me, he's in straight Denzel mode. He's tucked in the corner. Nobody messes with him, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I just walked over there and hey, you remember me? Of course he didn't. But he started talking to me about at that time John David was at Morehouse, uh,
His son? Yeah,
his
yeah,
son.
yeah.
You know, and he started telling me about him. Um, and it was a cool little 10-minute conversation. And for the next 2 years, I would see him and it'd be nothing. It's like a what's up kind of a deal. And mind you, he was gone. He would be around for 6 months, then leave for 6 months, and he was sporadically inside and out, or in and out. Um, but it was just like that. And then one day, uh, I was on a bike, and well, he was on a bike, and I was lifting, and he said, "Hey, Bo, come here." And I went over there, and he just talked to me for about an hour. I swear I learned so much in that hour. It may be longer, but I think that's what broke the seal. So every day after that, it was you get your workout in. I get my workout in, and then there's Denzel time. We
Wow.
will literally sit there and talk forever. So one night, and mind you, for the next 2 years, I didn't tell him my ambition. I didn't tell him what I wanted to do because I felt like our friendship was authentic and it was organic, you know. Um,
Mhm.
so I just left it alone, and then I had and this is when he was going to direct Great Debaters, 2007, I think that was. So one night, I had a dream, right, and I haven't told him this, but if you remember you remember Training Day, his
Oh
character.
yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So my dream was I was chasing Lonzo. He was in the car. He was in the same. I think it's a Cutlass. He was in the black Cutlass. So I was chasing him in the downtown streets, and the road was like this. It's a roller coaster road, and then all of a sudden I hit it, boom, and I crashed into the downtown building. Now in the dream, you know how dreams are. I felt like I died,
Mhm.
but it was so peaceful. And the only people in that dream was my immediate family and a whole bunch of white folks that I didn't know. so, so, so when I saw him the next day, I don't know, something just raised me out of the chair and said, go tell him. So I said, look, I wanted to know if I could shadow you for the great debaters that you're going to direct. And I had no idea where the location was or anything. He said, okay, of course you can. Then he says, we're filming in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I don't have nothing in the budget for you. At this time, my money ain't right. I can't have a 10-day trip to Shreveport, Louisiana. I can't do it. So I go back. At the time, the modeling agency was upstart. We were doing well. Me and the owner of the place that I interned, we started our own company. So I was telling her about it. She said, Phillip, I have points. If Denzel Washington wants you to go to Shreveport, Louisiana, you're going to Louisiana. So she paid for it for the flight. And then I was telling my mom, I'm like, Mom, Denzel wants me to go. I got the flight covered, but I don't know I'm a stay in a hotel for 10 days kind of a deal. She said, Phillip, we have family in Shreveport. What? So I land and I go to these people's home I'd never met, who's supposed to be family. And there's a big banner on the garage that says, welcome to Shreveport, Cousin Phillip.
Wow.
Balloons and everything. I'm telling you, this is what really happened. So, food, it was on and all that stuff. So I'm sitting there and they were like, why are you here? I said, well, Denzel is on a set down here and I don't know where it is. I don't have anybody to contact or anything. And one of the guys said, man, I'm assistant wardrobe on that set. I was like, really? He was like, yeah. So he gave me the address. I rented my car, gave me an address, and I went there. And he was like, it was incredible. I'm in the director's bay with him, Felipe Rousselot, who's an Oscar-winning cinematographer, Todd Black, who's one of the biggest producers in Hollywood, and me. And I'm sitting there soaking in. I got my pad and just soaking in for the good 10 days. I was there. And then, our relationship, expanded from that point. It's crazy,
Whoa,
right?
especially how well it was meant to be. Let's face it.
See, and that's one thing that I've learned. This life, man, things are going to happen, good or bad. But it's the place that you're in with yourself that usually dictates that. That was just one of the instances that I'm supposed to meet this man. I'm supposed to learn from this man. All of that to propel me to where I'm still going. But it's definitely meeting him and building the relationship and the authentic relationship with him that I built was definitely one of those meant to be, because I was talking to you about mentor and somebody who could snatch me up. He's definitely a person in my life that was that for me. In football, Tim Brown was that guy for me, but Denzel definitely was that guy for me.
Wow.
No question about it.
So now, are you being that guy for others?
Absolutely. I got
Yeah.
no choice, man. It's
Yeah.
like one of those things. And over the years, he done something like he one time paid for my son to come for Christmas. I mean, just a random. He invited me to his place and we read one of my scripts. It's just stuff like that. Check this out. He gave my script to Lawrence Fishburne at Sidney Poitier's house.
Oh, whoa.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like that has it happened. I lived it. So in terms of destiny and things like that, mine is clear for me.
Yeah.
That's why I love what I do so much. Is it's clear. And one thing that global taught me and showed me uh, is that it reminded me who I am too. At the
Hmm.
same time, it reminded me who I am. I touched a lot of lives, and I wish I was more at the time cognizant of how important that is. Um, but now I walk with it. So I come into place with love, and that's what I want to give and hopefully receive it. That's the way out of all the stuff that I've experienced in my lifetime, all the trauma, all the pain, I'm more comfortable in a space where I'm being my authentic self, and that's definitely from a loving place.
Yeah.
But I got hands too, so I'll put them on you real quick
I don't
too.
want to
Don't
know about
I'm just saying
that.
over
So
here.
where are you at now, and where are you going with your writing?
So I've been a writer for hire for a long time. I have a few projects of my own, 5 that I've been shopping this, and this past year has been so different. I came so close to getting my own stuff done, and for example, I was working for a man named Paul Eckstein, who uh, created Narcos and
Huh?
Godfather of Harlem, and he was set to direct uh, a story of mine, and we're 2 months out, and he passed away suddenly.
Oh no.
So, but I've had to regroup because he was kind of my champion. Um, I made more money in his camp than anything. So one of those things that just happened. I just ran into somebody who just so happens to know a guy who's starting a film fund, and he likes my stuff. So 25 is going to be really, really, really good in God's name.
So as you look at the young people, the young men that are playing football these days, and you know where it's all at with NIL and
Yeah.
portal and all of that, and what's happening for WSU with the implosion of the Pac-12. What would you tell the young people today?
I don't know what to tell them because that's a playbook that I've never read because we weren't getting money,
Yeah.
and I don't know how that would affect somebody or a kid if you could jump in a portal and go somewhere else because you don't want to be at that other place anymore. I don't know how that works. I'm just hoping they've got somebody, if it's not their parents, and they've got somebody that really loves them and really cares about them and not their own self-interest. I mean, if anything, I would tell them to use discernment when it comes to choosing your people, because you get to choose your people in this lifetime. So if you just be careful in who you allow in your space, and just know what you're doing it for. You always need to know the why. If you're like I can say this freely now, my life's goal as a kid, or what I wanted to do, it was never about the Hall of Fame for me. I didn't want to be a great football player. I wanted to be a great filmmaker. So that was my detachment in my experience. So if football is your thing, you really have to respect what it costs. Football costs. You know, if you're not consumed with it, you're not going to make it. Because that's what it requires. And even, you know, when the season's not happening, you still have to do stuff for football.
Right.
And hopefully you have a family who recognizes the greatness that you are. What I missed was I didn't realize the greatness of attaining a scholarship and excelling in a conference such as the Pac-12. I didn't realize the greatness in it, but I look at it now. Yeah, that's some great stuff because not everybody gets to do it, and a lot of people want to.
Yeah.
So just find your why, and hopefully you have some type of spiritual understanding about yourself, whatever avenue you choose to take, because that's where the grounding is, and just be careful with the decisions that you're making, and just know the why is the most important thing. Why are you doing this? You know, if it's to attain, if it's to get to the league, then you got to buckle down and do it. As far as transferring, I don't know what to tell you about that.
Hey, listen, I want to thank you for taking the time to
Yes.
tell me your story, because you have a great story, tremendous story that I think a lot of people need to hear. And I'm going to suggest that you, maybe since you're a writer, you write a book about what you've gone through, because it's a hell of a story that I think a lot of people and a lot of young people, a lot of people just need to hear. And you know, you got a lot of love, I think, following you. All right.
I appreciate it, man. Thank
Phillip
you.
Bobo, thank you.
The Chino Y Chicano podcast is available on your favorite podcast provider.
You can watch the video version on YouTube, and Converge Media, a leading producer of culturally relevant content in the Pacific Northwest. We'll talk more later.